Hi, I recently did a little introduction about one of my favorite board games slash tabletop games, technically a deck building game called Star Realms. And I just wanted to show the coolness of it, but I decided I also now wanted to basically teach how to play the game so that you can see whether you would enjoy it yourself. I like to describe it as having a lot of really easy rules. In other words, there are lots of little pieces of information or little steps or little choices you have to make that are in and of themselves super easy, but remembering which ones go where and when and why is a bit of a bear, but just for the first few games. After the first few games and checking the rules, I think it's a very smooth deck building game. Let me show you. Despite how elaborate the game is, the main objective is to eliminate your opponent, and you do that by reducing their life, technically called, I think, victory points, reducing it to 0. The default game starts at 50. Notice this strange way of counting. It's 5-0 for 50, and then add the 0 mark, so this would be like 45 or 72. The game starts at 50. And the objective is to destroy your opponents. Now this is a deck building game, and your starting deck consists of 2 Vipers and 8 Scouts. Hopefully the little symbols imply what they do, but the Vipers are your starting damage dealers, and the Scouts are your starting trade cards. And by trade I mean purchasing power, like little golden coins you can see. Each one is worth 1 gold coin, 1 damage each. You can determine who goes first arbitrarily, but the first step is to shuffle your miniature deck of your 2 Vipers and your 8 Scouts, and the very first person draws 3 cards to give them a slight disadvantage to compensate for the advantage going first, and then every turn after that, you just draw 5. Before I get too far ahead, let me tell you about the purchasing deck or the rest of the cards. Because I have so many expansions and they've become so fluffy with the card protectors, I have these 5 piles right here, but technically they're all the same stack, and whenever you purchase a card, you replace it from this menu. We'll see that in a moment. Also, the Explorers are the default card for when you don't have something that you can afford or something that you really want, because all of these guys cost more than 2. Notice the cost is in the top right. He costs 4. He costs 5. He costs 6. 4. And 3. The Explorer's there for a default option. Now in this particular hypothetical case, I've drawn 5 Scouts. That means I have 5 coins with which to buy. Going back to the menu I just saw, here are all these fine options. Just to keep it simple for now, I'm going to purchase the Heavy Cruiser. As soon as you purchase a card, it goes straight into your discard. Now you don't have to use a tray, but I like these little things to keep things organized. Here's my deck waiting to be drawn and played for next turns, and here is my discard. Anytime I buy something, let me say it again, you buy it, it goes in the discard, because here's the magic. A lot of people get alarmed at this point. Your purchases are going to be shuffled in later. When you've drawn all of your deck and used those and played those and finished with that, you're going to shuffle everything in your discard and put it into your new refreshed deck. Let me also mention that the cards you play to damage, purchase, and do whatever other actions are out there, once those have done their things, you collect them all and put those into your discard and draw 5 new cards getting ready for your next turn. Back to that card I just purchased, all I have to do is replace it from the deck. So to say again, I have these 5 piles just because I can't fit them all in one tall stack, but you don't have to distribute them that way. Whatever works for you. Just remember that these are the cards waiting to replace what is called the trade row. Once your turn is done, after you've used your cards, you take them all and you put them in your discard. Waiting for a new turn, you draw 5 fresh cards. And now it's the other player's turn. In this scenario, the other player drew 2 Vipers and 3 Scouts. The Scouts work like they always do, so let's purchase first. To keep things simple again, I like this fighter base. I'm going to set him aside really for just a moment because we're going to talk about bases soon. But right now I want to emphasize what these red dots do. This is where the game actually focuses, even though it takes a while to get there. Your main goal is to destroy your enemy by using red damage to reduce their victory points to 0. So this player would say, hey, Nathan, I have 2 damage. And I would say, oh, dang it. So I'd arrange my cards showing 48. 50 minus 2 is 48. I mentioned bases just a moment ago because they're very special. Your normal cards, the ones that are technically called ships, and they have vertical pictures. Notice, for comparison's sake, he's vertical. The horizontal arranged cards have defense numbers in the bottom right. What those mean is that these will sit in front of you, repeating their action every turn until an opponent eliminates them. In other words, your normal ships will do their thing, you'll complete your turn, you'll take them all, and you'll discard them so that you can shuffle them in later. But bases stick around and keep doing their action. Here in this particular simple case, he will grant you 1 coin every turn. So you will have your 5-card draw, plus this guy, assuming he's not destroyed by an opponent, every turn. Normal bases have a silver shield representing a number. And the way these work is if your opponent has 3 or more damage, so let's go with this one first, 3 or more damage in 1 turn, he can blow this up. And all that does is it makes you discard. Same story here. It has to be all 4 damage in 1 turn. In other words, if your opponent only has 2 damage that turn, they can't just drop 2 on this and hopefully get 2 later. It has to be all in one go. You'll notice some cards have this black outlined shield with a little word outpost right above it. These are special because with normal bases, your opponent can choose to shoot them or you if they have the option. Whereas outposts need to be destroyed before your opponent can come after you. So these are great defensive maneuvers. Another thing you might have noticed is that a lot of the cards have colors or symbols, well, both, in the top left. These guys are the little blue cross. Technically, it's the Trade Federation team. You'll also notice that they both have blank actions, actions with no symbol next to them, and symboled actions. I call these guys buddy bonuses because these only activate if you have another Trade Federation unit in play. So, for example, if I had a hand full of 2 Vipers, 2 Scouts, and 1 Trade Hauler, all together, I would only have 2 damage and 5 coins. Now that's a solid turn, but notice this little symbol that isn't getting activated because of my lack of a buddy bonus. Let's suppose I had played this defense center on a previous turn. Now I have that same hand that I just described. These 2 units activate each other, meaning this green 3, will add 3 life to my victory points. So here's my 50, bump it up to 53. And then my base gives me a bonus 2 damage. Now this guy's pretty cool. Notice it says 3 life or 2 damage. So for the top category, I pick one of those options. But the bottom thing is added by default. So I could say 3 life for myself, 2 damage for my enemy, or 4 damage for my enemy. In this hypothetical case, I'll just say 4 damage for my enemy, plus these 2 is 6 total. Here's his life. Boom, 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 boom. He's now at 42. I add 3 to my own. Already done. And I still have the 5 coins to purchase from the trade row. Just to show you some examples of the different factions in the game, there are the Trade Federation, bases and ships. This is the Machine Cult. These are blobs. And these are Star Empire units. Even without expansions, there are so many cards in the game that have all these little choices or decisions or things you have to keep track of. I call it fine print, and sometimes it really is fine print, but it'll say, target opponent discards a card, that kind of thing. But a lot of times it's just symbols that you have to keep track of. Speaking of symbols, I want to distinguish between some things. Setting him aside for a moment, we have a buddy bonus, so we'll just count that. The default action for this particular card is you get 2 coins to buy other cards. Now this little symbol indicates he needs to have a buddy to make this happen. And there are 2 pieces of information on this little segment. That means 2 damage for your enemy and you can make them discard a card. Super cool. This particular guy has a lot of cool functions. Notice it has these two pieces of information. It does not say or, so you get them both. 5 damage for your enemy, and you can make them discard another card if we had both these at the same time. Look at this little trash can. This is special. This is the scrap function. When you have a card with this symbol, it means that you can say, oh, you know what? Just this one time, I want his little extra bonus. But scrapping is kind of risky because instead of discarding into your discard, shuffling it back in later, you throw it away. Throwing it away means it just sets outside the game and never comes back. Let me clarify, there are a lot of cards with the little trash can scrap function at the very bottom. And that means you can play the card, you get whatever it normally gives you, including buddy bonuses if it has the appropriate faction joining him. But if you want to get that extra scrap bonus, you keep all of the bonuses you got before, but the card goes out of your deck into the little scrap pile and it never comes back. There's another special case, and the machine called ships and bases are specially renowned for this. You'll notice it says, you may scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. Discard pile is whatever you've discarded from previous turns or purchased recently, including your starter cards, which is cards you want to scrap. You want to get them out. You send them to the trash pile, the scrap pile, so that they don't slow down your deck. And in your hand means cards that you haven't yet played at all. The important distinction is if you play any of these guys to get coins from them, that means you have played them. They're not in your hand, they're not in your discard, they're in play. So when it says from your hand, it means unplayed so far, which is a tactical option. You got to make an intelligent choice if it ever comes to that, but just to keep that in mind as a possibility. So that's Star Realms in a nutshell. There are a few nuances that might come up, specifically if you buy other expansions. There are certain cards that have 2 factions in one go. They're like red and green or whatever, so that's cool. And then there's lots of the main burden / power. Honestly, the winning power comes from reading the fine print. When you have the trade row in front of you and there are 5 different cards, read the fine print. That's what's going to make it work for you. Great game, easy to set up, takes a few games to get used to the rules and the mechanics, but once you have that going, it is so smooth and accommodates up to 4 players by default, and more if you have different expansions or like the starting deck of 10 cards, you know, the 8 scouts and the 2 vipers. Whole lot of fun, very colorful. Definitely, of course, is sci-fi oriented, so if that's your flavor, awesome. And if it's not, it's still a great game worth trying. I hope you'll give it a try.